Well folks, we're on part 2 of the Jacobsen G-10 tractor revamp. So today we're going to be getting the transmission cover pulled off and taking a look at the shifter mechanism and everything. With all the water dripping in there over the years, it's all seized up, and also be a good opportunity to take a look at the gears and make sure those aren't all rusted up. So we'll get this cover scraped off, then we can get to pulling it right off. Yeah, that don't look real great. Some pretty bad looking stuff inside. Here's the top of the shift cover. As you can see, it's pretty well rusted up, but should be able to free it up. But the transmission doesn't look real great. Down in here, you can see I stirred up a lot of that crap down in there, and there's some stuff on the gears, but they don't look too bad. First is obviously been ground quite a bit, and I would assume that would be second there, which seems pretty well ground. So that's all gonna have to get flushed out and cleaned out some sort of way. I'll probably end up draining this fluid out, throwing some other used gear oil in there or something and try to run that through it, and just keep flushing it a couple of times until it looks fairly decent for the most part. So let's get this thing in the vise here. We can start cleaning this shift cover up. Pretty crusty stuff in there. Transmission top cover is all cleaned up. As you can see, everything moves like it should again. All my forks are loose. I also had to rewire a lot of my set screws, all of my set screws actually, because the wire had rotted off from all the water in there. So I cleaned up my surface here for the gasket, and I'm going to be cutting a new gasket for it because somebody had blue RTV'd this. And I've got a piece of gasket paper right here. I have to cut out a square in the middle of it, that way I can drop it over the forks, and then I can set it down here and hopefully press out this pattern with any luck. That way I can cut it out. Alright, so that'll work out nice like that. And to be able to get this pattern on there, I'm just going to put a little thin coat of oil on this edge, so when I press it on with the hammer, it'll show up. And usually a lot of people like to take and put the gasket material on here and knock it out with the hammer. Preferably I'd rather try to trace the pattern myself and cut it out with a pair of scissors and use hole punches, just because it always comes out a little bit nicer. And then it's just a matter of holding it in one spot and hoping it stays there. Alright, not bad. As you can see, we got a pretty good pattern on there with all my holes showing. So all I'm going to do is just cut this out and we'll have a nice gasket to work with. There you have it. There's our transmission top cover gasket. Transmission's all set. I got the top cover on here with the shifter put on with the new gasket. Everything lined up really nicely. I had some problems with the gears inside. As you'll see here, the first and second gear setup was stuck on the sliding shaft pretty well, so I was able to get that loosened up luckily enough. I didn't know if I was going to have to pull out the transmission or not, and then I just filled it up with some used motor oil, and we'll run it like that for a while, flush it, and then run it through again and see how it looks. So we'll finish bolting this down here, and then we're going to start moving on to the brakes. I'm going to pull this cover off here, and we can take a look at the master cylinder and see what the story is on that. Well, that one's going to get ground off. That's a flathead. I know that's not going to come out. All right. As long as this battery box clears. Well, everything's pretty cut and dry once you get all the floor pans pulled off. So I got access to the master cylinder now, as you can see. I'm going to try to get this piece of brake line out of here without breaking it. I might have to warm it up a little bit, and then I can turn that out. And then I'm going to pull this out, and we can pull it apart on the bench because the piston still moves with the pedal. So I'm hoping that the bore is still good. Worst comes to worst, I can always get a rebuild kit for it online someplace, and then I have to see if I can sandblast the inside of it out, or bead blast it, glass bead blast it, and see if I can get all the rust out of it. So we'll have to see if we can get it cleaned up. If not, I still have the number from the new one that I bought for the Worthington, and I can always take that route and buy a new one. But anyways, we'll get this line pulled off of here, get the cylinder pulled out, and we can get it on the bench. Well, it's moving, but the line is stuck inside of the fitting. So I'm going to get the torch and try to warm that up a little bit and see if we can get it to spin freely. More than likely this is all going to need new lines anyways, but I'm going to try to at least save them for the time being just to make sure everything works. we go. Broke free. Not much of anything for fluid, but still a little bit left. Now I just got to pull the 2 bolts out of the 3 that are supposed to be holding the master cylinder in. And then we can pull that off. Master cylinder is out. I really can't tell how the bore is inside until I pull it out, because you got a washer with a snap ring on holding the plunger on the inside. And as for the inside of the reservoir, as you can see, it really doesn't look too great, but it looks better than some of the ones that I've pulled apart. So I'm going to see if I get that cleaned out for the most part, see if I can degrease it, and then run it through the glass bead blaster. And I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to save this rather than have to buy one. I'll see if I can get the fitting pulled out of the end of it, and we'll also see if we can get the plunger out of the end of it here and get that all cleaned out. So we'll start disassembly and see if we can revive this thing. Definitely need a rebuild. You guys can see that. Pretty bad looking stuff on the inside. Master cylinder cleaned up fairly decent for the most part. The inside actually cleaned out fairly nice. And the cylinder, the bore was a little bit rugged down the bottom in the very back. You guys can't really see it. And it's a little bit pitted up in the front here too. I ran the hone through it and it seems okay. So I think I'm going to take a chance and get a rebuild kit for this. It's an 1 1/16 bore. It's a Wagner Lockheed, which is kind of an oddball size, and there's not a lot of kits out there for them. But I think the 30s to 50s Ford trucks and cars used that size master cylinder. So I should be able to find kits somewhere, hopefully with somebody that sells old Ford parts. So I'll have to see if I can get that ordered up this week, and then I can get this painted up, and then that can go back in. But right now we're going to be pulling the rear wheels off. I'm going to get this up on jack stands, and then we can pull the drums off and see how our wheel cylinders are, and see if those are going to have to get replaced also. Good old split rims. Don't look like they're in too bad a shape either. And someone's already been here because the 2 screws have been taken out. Drums don't look all too bad. Still a little bit shiny from us rolling it around. So those will clean up all right for the most part. And our shoes still have enough life left on them for what I'm going to be using this tractor for. I'm not going to be driving it down the road all the time, so it's not like I need to have really a lot of meat left on there. So I'm happy with what those are. And the wheel cylinders, if you can kind of see in there, there's that white powdery crusty stuff. So I'm assuming that they're just going to be junk from sitting for so long, and I just assume buy new ones and put new ones in instead of trying to rebuild these and then have them leak. I ended up putting new ones in the Worthington when I got it, and in the long run it's just easier, and you know they're gonna end up working and they won't end up leaking or anything like that. So that's gonna be all for part 2, folks. In part 3 we're gonna be getting the master cylinder done, taken care of. We can get these wheel cylinders done and the brakes buttoned up, and then we can start moving back to the engine and getting some of the fuel system taken care of and repairing that exhaust manifold. So there you have it.